Why a man who needs no one is dangerous. Nietzsche, Aurelius. Imagine a man who walks into a room and needs nothing from anyone. Not approval, not affection, not attention. He's calm. He's centered. He doesn't dominate the space with loudness or bravado, but the room bends toward him anyway. Why? Because there's something rare, almost unsettling about someone who carries no hunger for validation. Most people don't even realize how much of their behavior is driven by the need to be liked, followed, noticed, or accepted. But this man, he's not playing that game. He is free. And in that freedom, he becomes dangerous not because he means harm, but because he reveals a truth most people work hard to avoid. Dependence is a cage we decorate with comfort. We don't just fear people who don't need others, we resent them. Because they quietly dismantle the scripts we live by. From school to work to social media, we are conditioned to seek approval at every turn. We measure our worth in likes, in followers, in praise from bosses and peers, and our self-esteem is outsourced. But what if someone opts out? What if someone builds an inner life so strong, so disciplined, so rooted in principle, that they no longer need external reinforcement to feel alive, to feel worthy, to feel real? That man becomes a mirror to our weakness, a walking contradiction to the world we built, and that's why he's dangerous. Nietzsche called this type of person the Übermensch, the higher man, the one who creates his own values rather than inheriting them. He does not ask, "What should I believe?" or "What will people say if I do this?" He asks, "What is true for me?" And when he finds the answer, he acts on it alone if necessary. He doesn't rebel for the sake of rebellion, he simply stands where others kneel. And that stance, that refusal to bend when the crowd demands it, shakes the foundations of every social system built on conformity. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, lived this truth in the most literal way. Despite ruling over millions, he trained himself every day to need less, to expect nothing from others, to accept fate with grace, to live as if reputation were meaningless. His journal, Meditations, wasn't written for the world. It was written to himself as a daily reminder to stay grounded, to stay inwardly free. "It is not things that disturb us," he wrote, "but our judgments about them." He understood that the most powerful man is the one who rules his own mind. And when you truly learn that when you embody it, you become untouchable.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But let's be clear, this is not about isolation. It's not about becoming a monk in a cave or cutting off relationships to feel superior. It's about sovereignty. It's about being in the world, but not owned by it. It's about being able to love without clinging, to lead without needing followers, to serve without seeking applause. When you need nothing, you can give everything. And that's what makes you dangerous, not your detachment, but your abundance. Now ask yourself, how much of your daily energy is spent managing other people's perceptions of you? How many of your decisions are made to avoid judgment, to win praise, to stay in the good graces of the crowd? And what would your life look like if you stopped doing that? Who would you be if you no longer needed to be seen a certain way? It's a terrifying question, because the truth is, most of us don't know. We've never met the version of ourselves that is free. We've been performing for so long that we've forgotten what our real voice sounds like. And yet, somewhere deep inside, there's a part of you that remembers. A part that's tired of pretending. A part that knows you were made for something greater than likes and applause. That part is your inner philosopher, your inner king, your inner Übermensch. And it's waiting for you to stop chasing approval long enough to hear it speak. But here's the twist: when you stop needing people, you don't become cold, you become clear. You don't become distant, you become present. Because you're no longer filtering your experience through the lens of impression management. You're fully alive in each moment, not trying to extract anything from it. That's what makes such a man magnetic. He listens without trying to impress. He speaks without trying to dominate. He acts without trying to manipulate. And that integrity, that wholeness draws people in. Not because he needs them, but because they want what he has, peace. So the real question is this: do you have the courage to become someone who needs no one? Not in a bitter, withdrawn way, but in a powerful, self-possessed way. A man who can walk into a room not wondering, do they like me? But asking, do I like who I am right now? That's the shift. That's the danger. And that's the beginning of real freedom. The fortress within, how to build a mind nothing can shake. So how do you get there? How do you become the man who needs no one, not out of arrogance, but from a place of deep, unshakable inner strength? It starts with building the only thing in this world you can truly control: your mind. Not just your thoughts or your ideas, but the entire structure of your inner life. Nietzsche and Marcus Aurelius both knew that the world outside can only shake you if you've failed to anchor yourself inside. The chaos out there becomes irrelevant when you've built a fortress in here. Let's be real. Most people live in mental houses made of glass. Their emotional stability depends on how their day goes, how someone speaks to them, how their post performs online. It's a fragile existence. One insult shatters their confidence. One rejection collapses their sense of worth. They're constantly reacting, constantly adjusting, constantly chasing a sense of balance that always slips away. But the man who needs no one, he lives in stone. He has built his mind brick by brick, not to block the world out, but to stand firm no matter what the world throws at him. Marcus Aurelius would wake up each morning and remind himself, today you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Imagine starting your day like that, not with blind optimism, but with powerful realism. Why? Because he knew the world wasn't going to be soft. He didn't expect it to be kind. And so, he hardened not his heart, but his mind. He trained himself to be unmoved by the unpredictable nature of other people. And in that training, he found freedom. Nietzsche took it even further. He didn't just want to survive the world's harshness, he wanted to transcend it. He saw suffering as the raw material for greatness. He who has a why to live, he said, can bear almost any how. That's the key. The man who needs no one isn't empty, he's full of purpose. He doesn't need others to prop him up because he's already standing on something solid, his own meaning, his own code, his own vision of life. But let me ask you something difficult. Have you ever tested your mind under pressure? Not just in theory, but in reality. Have you ever sat in silence for hours, listening to your own thoughts without distraction? Have you ever been insulted, rejected, or betrayed and responded not with rage or collapse, but with calm clarity? If not, then what you've built may not be a fortress yet. And that's okay, because now is the time to start. You begin by stripping away the non-essentials. Most of our mental clutter comes from things that don't belong to us, beliefs we inherited, fears we absorbed, goals we didn't choose. The fortress within is not a place of noise. It is a place of simplicity, of focus, of discipline. You decide what matters. You decide who you are. And anything that doesn't align with that, no matter how popular or persuasive, gets left outside the gate. You also train your mind through hardship, not by avoiding discomfort, but by seeking it out. Cold showers, early mornings, difficult conversations, these are not just tasks. They are weights, and your mind, like your body, grows stronger when you lift heavy things. Nietzsche would argue that your pain is not your enemy, it is your forge. The more you endure with conscious intention, the more unshakable you become. And then, perhaps most importantly, you learn to be alone, not lonely alone. You sit with yourself until you no longer need noise. You walk your own path until you no longer need company to validate it. You learn to like your own presence. Because only then, only when you are truly comfortable in solitude, can you engage with others from a place of strength rather than need. So here's the question that can change your life. If everything collapses tomorrow, your job, your relationships, your status, what is left inside you? What remains when there is no applause, no comfort, no one watching? That answer is your foundation. That answer is your fortress. The power of indifference, why you must stop caring to truly love. Here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing people is the moment you actually become capable of loving them. Not with the desperate grasp of dependence, but with the open hand of strength. This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." He and Nietzsche, who seemed to live in opposition to sentimentality, ultimately held a deep reverence for a kind of love that existed beyond transaction, beyond weakness, and beyond need. In our culture, love is often confused with attachment. But attachment is fear wearing the mask of affection. It says, I need you to act a certain way so I can feel okay. It's not about the other person, it's about your own emotional survival. That's not love. That's control. Real love emerges only when you no longer need the other person to complete you, validate you, or save you. When you are full, not hollow. When you can say, I choose you, instead of I need you. This is the indifference that frees you, not coldness, not apathy, but a radical detachment from outcome. Aurelius didn't teach us to be emotionless, but he taught us to be unshaken. He loved his family, served his people, and wrote deeply about human connection. But he built his love on principle, not passion. He could care deeply without clinging. And that's what made his love real. It was voluntary. It was not driven by deficiency, but by virtue. Nietzsche saw a similar truth from the other end of the spectrum. He recognized that many relationships are built on lies, on mutual illusions, on social roles, on the unspoken contract that says, I will pretend to be who you need if you pretend to love who I am. But the man who has freed himself from the need for approval, he doesn't play that game. He doesn't offer affection as a form of manipulation. He offers it as a gift with no strings attached. Think about how rare that is today. So much of our interaction is built on subtle pressure, on hidden expectations. We give compliments hoping to receive them. We say, I love you, hoping to hear it back. We sacrifice our authenticity to maintain a connection that's built on performance. But what happens when you no longer need to be liked? When you can speak the truth, even if it costs you everything? That's where love begins, not as security, but as freedom. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How often do you say yes to preserve peace when your soul screams no? How often do you let someone treat you poorly because the thought of losing them terrifies you? How often do you shrink, perform, or stay silent not out of respect, but out of fear? That's not love, that's self-abandonment, and it's time to stop calling it noble. The power of indifference is the power to walk away not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your integrity to stay in a situation that demands its sacrifice. It's the power to say, I hope you stay, but I'll be fine if you don't. That's not arrogance, that's self-respect. And it's the only foundation on which real connection can be built. Anything else is just codependency in disguise. When you stop needing people, a new kind of relationship becomes possible, one where both people are whole, where neither is trying to fill a void in the other, where you can walk side by side, not leaning on each other to stand, but moving together because you want to, not because you must. That's rare, that's powerful, and that's the kind of love the world desperately needs, one born from freedom, not fear. So I'll leave you with this question. Are you loving people from abundance or from emptiness? Are your relationships built on truth or on the quiet terror of being alone? And if you had to choose between being authentic and being accepted, what would you choose? The final evolution, how to become the man who walks alone and leads many. So here we are, the final evolution. The man who no longer needs anyone, who has built a mind nothing can shake, mastered the art of true love through indifference, and now stands at the edge of something greater, that leadership. Not leadership in the corporate sense, not in the hierarchical sense, but in the existential sense. The man who walks alone becomes the man who leads many, not because he seeks followers, but because people are drawn to clarity, to strength, to truth. This is leadership without manipulation, influence without force, presence without performance. It is the kind of power that doesn't come from domination or control, but from alignment. You become a lighthouse, not a shepherd. You don't chase anyone, you simply stand where you are, rooted in your values, lit from within, and those who are meant to find you do. And those who aren't, you let them go. Nietzsche never wanted us to become tyrants or saints. He wanted us to become free, to rise above the smallness of crowd-minded thinking, but to become individuals so fully formed, so self-reliant, that we inspire transformation just by existing. That's the final evolution, not to isolate yourself, but to become a force so grounded, so complete, that your presence makes others feel the possibility of their own liberation. Marcus Aurelius lived this quietly. He didn't write meditations for fame or followers. He wrote it to survive himself, to keep his soul intact, while ruling the largest empire in the world. And yet, his silent reflection has led millions. Why? Because his strength came from within. Because real leadership begins not with a command, but with a commitment to truth, to virtue, to the kind of life that can't be shaken by applause or criticism. Now ask yourself, if you lost everything tomorrow, your job, your friends, your reputation, would your principles remain? Would your values hold? Would your inner compass still point north? That's the measure of your strength. That's the measure of your leadership. Because in the end, the man who needs no one is not alone. He's simply not dependent, and that difference changes everything. It means his love is pure, his choices are free, and his influence is felt not through pressure, but through presence. So here is the final question, the one that unlocks your next chapter. Are you willing to walk alone long enough to become someone no one can ignore? Because that man is dangerous. That man is free. That man is you if you choose it.